On my wedding night, when I was 16 years old, a door opened, and what I saw on the other side told me that my life would never be a dream. That was the night I discovered I wasn't a wife. I was a commodity in a cruel contract signed by my own father. A contract with secret clauses that could ruin my entire family if I failed to produce a son within 3 years. Good morning to everyone watching me. My name is Sarah Jenkins. I am 71 years old, and today I am going to break a silence of more than 50 years. I'm not telling this story to seek pity, but so that anyone out there feeling hopeless knows that you can absolutely survive what seems impossible to survive. If you are listening from anywhere in the world, please leave a comment and subscribe because there are truths that need to be spread, even if they might shake your beliefs. There are stories, no matter how painful, that must be told. And to understand that journey, to understand how I went from a young bride who was sold to the free woman I am today, I have to take you back to rural Illinois in 1956, when I was born. I was born in a small community near Havenwood, where the prairie wind cuts your face and the pre-dawn cold makes you think your bones are going to break. My daddy, Walter, was a sharecropper. He had a few acres of land that barely gave corn and soybeans. My mom, Mary Quispa, was a quilter. Her hands were always busy with wool yarn, her fingers moving fast as spiders, making quilts and knitted scarves that she sold at the farmer's market in Peoria on Sundays. There were 6 of us kids. I was the 4th, the 3rd girl. My brothers Michael and David were the princes of the house. They were the ones who went to school in Havenwood, walking an hour and a half every morning. They ate first when there was meat. They sat by the fire while we, the women, served. My daddy used to say, "The boys need strength for the real work." Our work sewing from 4 inches the morning, herding the sheep all day on the hill, carrying water from the well, grinding corn for cornmeal, washing clothes in the icy river, taking care of the little ones, cooking on the wood-burning stove that filled the house with smoke, that work didn't count as real. I only went to school until the 3rd grade. I remember the teacher, Miss Emily, who came from Peoria with her long braids and her green skirt. She told me once, "Sarah, you have a head for numbers." I liked addition and subtraction, the order of math, how everything had sense and an answer. But when I turned 9, my daddy said, "That's enough. Women don't need any more school. You need to learn to sew well, so you'll be worth something when we marry you off." Just like that, my education ended. My days started when it was still dark. The smell of wood smoke and the sound of the wind hitting the tin roof woke me up. I'd get up shivering. The prairie cold came in through every crack in the walls. I'd help my mom start the fire, blowing on the embers until my cheeks burned. We'd drink hot coffee with bread if there was any, or just the thick coffee. Then I'd go out with the sheep to the hill, wrapping myself in my wool blanket that scratched, but kept me warm. I'd spend the whole day out there alone with the animals and the wind, spinning the spindle and yarn. The Illinois River shimmered below like a giant mirror, and I dreamed of things I knew would never happen. I dreamed of being a teacher like Miss Emily. I dreamed of living in a real house, with a concrete floor instead of packed dirt. I dreamed of having shoes that weren't worn-out sneakers. But most of all, I dreamed of choosing, of having a voice, of someone asking me what I wanted. A decent girl doesn't walk around with strange ideas in her head, my daddy would say when he saw me daydreaming. A decent girl obeys, works, and gets married when it's her time. Life on the prairie was hard, but it had its rhythm, its moments. The county fair, when we'd all go to Peoria and see the dances, the colorful costumes shining in the sun, the taste of pulled pork with cornbread on those special days, the smell of damp earth when it finally rained after dry months, the warmth of dried beans soaking for soup. The nights when my mom would tell us Bible stories and about the sacred river, her soft voice filling the darkness while we sewed by the fire. But there were also beatings. My daddy drank cheap whiskey on Saturdays and came back with red eyes and a lit temper. My mom took the blows in silence, with her head down. He'd hit us with a belt if we didn't finish our chores or if we talked back. "A woman who doesn't obey is good for nothing," he'd say. And my mom would nod, wiping her tears on the corner of her shawl. When I turned 14, things started to change. My daddy looked at me differently, as if sizing me up. I'd hear him talking to my mom in low voices when they thought I was asleep. "She's of age now," he'd say. "We need to find her a good match before she's past her prime." My mom would answer something I couldn't quite hear, her voice so low it was barely a whisper. On Sundays at the Peoria market, my daddy started taking me with him when we sold the potatoes and corn. He'd make me stand up straight in my best skirt and my newest shawl. Old men would look at me the way they looked at sheep before buying them, evaluating. They'd make me show my hands to see if I knew how to work. They'd ask me if I knew how to cook, if I knew how to sew. My daddy would answer for me, listing my skills as if I were a product for sale. "She knows how to do everything. She cooks well, sews fast, strong for work, obedient. Never caused any trouble." I would just stand there, my cheeks burning with shame, unable to say anything. I felt their heavy gazes on me, evaluating me, reducing me to what I could do with my hands and my back. In my head, I screamed, "I'm not a cow for you to sell." But my lips didn't move. A decent girl doesn't speak when men are negotiating. It was on one of those Sundays that Mr. Robert Johnson showed up. He was a big man, in his 40s, with an expensive leather jacket and an expensive felt Stetson. He had land in Bloomington, they said, a ranch with cattle and crops. He was a widower. His first wife had died 3 years ago. He needed a new wife. My daddy nearly fell over with excitement when Mr. Johnson approached our stall and looked at me with interest. They talked, they haggled, but not about corn. They haggled over me. I was 15 years old, and my life was about to change forever, but I still didn't know anything about the papers they were signing. I still didn't know that this marriage came with conditions that no one was going to explain to me. I still believed, innocent me, that I would get married like all the other girls, that I'd have a hard but normal life, that I'd be a wife and maybe a mother. I didn't know there were clauses. I didn't know there were deadlines. I didn't know my father had accepted terms that would make me less than a person. For you to understand how I got to where I am today, to this point where I can tell my story without my hands shaking, I first have to tell you about that Sunday when Mr. Johnson shook my father's hand, when they sealed the deal, when my fate was decided without anyone asking if I agreed. Because what I discovered later, what I saw that wedding night, what I had to live through in the years that followed, that would change not only my life, but my way of understanding everything I thought I knew about marriage, about family, about what it meant to be a woman on the prairie. The courtship lasted 3 months. 3 months where my life stopped being mine and became a negotiation between men. Mr. Robert Johnson came to visit us every Sunday after that first meeting at the market. He'd arrive in his big Ford truck, a huge, shiny thing that kicked up dust on the dirt road to our shack. The kids in the village would run behind the truck, shouting excitedly. We had never had visitors arrive in their own vehicle. My mom would clean the house like never before, sweeping the dirt floor until it was smooth as glass, hanging our best quilt on the wall to cover the cracks in the plaster. We'd kill a chicken, cook potato salad with the best hot sauce we had saved. My daddy would put on his least mended jacket and wait outside, pacing back and forth, more nervous than I'd ever seen him. Robert always arrived with gifts. One time he brought a battery-powered radio that played country music and folk songs. Another time he brought a bag of fine white sugar, not the brown sugar we bought. He brought fabric for skirts. He brought sweet rolls from the Peoria bakery. He even brought a bottle of bourbon once that he shared with my daddy. My younger siblings looked at him with wide eyes, as if he were baby Jesus come down from heaven. I sat in a corner of the room with my head down, not daring to look at him directly. A decent girl doesn't look her suitor in the eye. My mom sat next to me, knitting non-stop, her hands moving quickly while she watched my every move. The visits were like that. The men talked, drank, laughed. The women served and stayed quiet. Robert talked about his land, his wheat and corn crops, his herd of cattle, which were the finest in the area. He talked about his big house in Bloomington, with a tin roof and concrete floors in every room. He talked about how lonely it was living alone since his wife had passed, how he needed a woman to take care of the house, to cook, to keep him company. He never mentioned children from his first marriage. Now I know why. My daddy listened, mesmerized, nodding at everything, refilling Robert's glass every time it was empty. I watched how my daddy's eyes sparkled with everything Robert described. It was like watching a starving man look at a plate of food he could never eat, but that maybe, just maybe, his daughter could. It seemed to me that Robert was too good to be true. A man with land, with money, with his own truck. Why would he want to marry a poor girl from a lost community? A girl who could barely read. There were girls in Peoria, in Springfield, girls with more education, with less miserable families. Why me? Once, I gathered the courage to ask my mom while we were washing clothes in the river. "Mom, don't you think it's weird that Mr. Johnson wants me?" My mom stopped scrubbing the skirt she had in her hands and looked at me with those tired eyes she had, eyes that had seen too much and expected too little. "Sarah," she said, "when God sends you a blessing, you don't question it. Your daddy knows what he's doing. Mr. Johnson is a good match. You're going to live well. You'll have a real house. You won't go hungry like us. That's what matters." But in her voice, there was something that wasn't exactly happiness. It was more like resignation, as if she also felt something was strange but didn't dare to name it. My older sister, Elizabeth, who was already married and lived in Havenwood, came to visit us when she heard about my engagement. She took me aside, behind the house where no one could hear us. "Sarah," she said, grabbing my hands, "be careful. Rich men don't marry poor girls for no reason. There's always a reason." I asked her what reason there could be. She shook her head. "I don't know, but keep your eyes open. And if something goes wrong, if he treats you badly, you send word to me, and I'll come get you." I hugged her tight, feeling like it was the last time someone treated me as if my feelings mattered. The weeks passed, and the wedding day got closer. The date was set for August 15th, the Feast of the Assumption. My daddy and Robert had gone to Peoria several times to run errands, they said. Paperwork for the civil marriage. One time, I saw them coming out of a lawyer's office on the main square, my daddy folding papers and putting them in his pocket, smiling in a way that gave me chills. I wanted to ask him what those papers were, but I remembered that a decent girl doesn't ask about what men decide. My mom and I prepared my trousseau. I didn't have much. 3 skirts I had sewn, 2 blouses, a new shawl my mom knitted for me, working late into the night. My hands trembled as I folded each garment. I was scared of leaving my home, as miserable as it was. Scared of Mr. Robert, who, although polite to me, had cold eyes. Scared of the wedding night, of what would happen, of what was expected of me. My mom had never explained any of that. She just told me, "Obey in everything. Don't cry. That's just how things are." The wedding day arrived. I woke up with the rooster's crow, my stomach in a knot. My mom bathed me with water heated in the pot. She braided my hair tightly, put me in the new red skirt that Robert had sent for, the white embroidered blouse, the fine shawl. I looked at myself in the broken piece of mirror we had and didn't recognize the girl looking back. She looked older, She looked scared. The ceremony was at the church in Havenwood. Father Thomas married us in a quick mass. Robert put a gold ring on my finger. I repeated the vows the priest told me, my voice so quiet it was barely audible. I signed the marriage registry with a trembling hand, my signature all crooked because I had never written my full name on an important document. Sarah Jenkins. That was me, or what I had been. Afterwards, we went to the courthouse where we signed more papers. The clerk read things quickly, words I didn't understand. Rights, obligations, property regime. My head was spinning. Robert and my daddy signed. They put my finger on an ink pad and made me put my thumbprint in several places. What was I signing? I didn't know. They didn't explain. They just told me where to put my finger. There was a small party at our house. They roasted a lamb. There was whiskey, there was music, people danced. I sat next to Robert, stiff, unable to eat anything. He drank and laughed with the men. My daddy was drunk on happiness and whiskey, hugging everyone, repeating, "My daughter married well. My daughter is going to live well." Everyone was celebrating. Everyone was dancing. Not a single person asked if I wanted to, because in that world, silence was how you survived. Asking questions meant making trouble, and nobody wanted trouble knocking at their door, you see. My mom cried quietly in her corner, wiping her tears with her shawl. When it started to get dark, Robert stood up. "It's time to go," he said. My stomach tightened. Go to his house in Bloomington, far from everything I knew. I said goodbye to my family. My mom hugged me tight, whispering in my ear, "Be strong, my girl. Be obedient." My little brothers hugged my legs, crying. My daddy clapped me on the back, avoiding my eyes. Elizabeth squeezed my hand hard, reminding me without words of what she had told me. I got into Robert's truck with my bundle of clothes. He started the engine, and we began to pull away. I looked out the window and saw my family getting smaller and smaller in the distance, until they disappeared when we turned down the road. Tears ran down my cheeks, but I wiped them away quickly. "Don't cry," my mom had said. The drive to Bloomington took 2 hours. Robert didn't talk much. I looked out the window at the darkness of the prairie, the stars so bright they seemed close, the cold coming in through the cracks in the truck. My old life was being left behind with every mile. When we arrived in Bloomington, it was pitch black. Robert drove through dirt streets until we reached a big house, just as he had promised. It had 2 floors, white-painted adobe walls, a tin roof, and a large wooden door. On the sides, there were corrals and a barn. You could tell it was the house of someone with money. Robert parked the truck and told me, "Get out." I got out, my legs trembling, clutching my bundle to my chest. He took out a key and opened the door. It was dark inside. He turned on a light bulb hanging from the ceiling. The living room was large, with wooden furniture, a long table, chairs, all clean, but with that musty smell of a house that's been empty for a while. "Come," Robert said, and started climbing a set of wooden stairs that creaked. I followed him, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would explode. We went up to the 2nd floor. There was a hallway with 3 doors. He opened one. It was a bedroom. A double bed with thick blankets, a chest, a window with curtains. He put my bundle on the floor. Then he turned to me, his face serious in the dim light from the hallway bulb. "Sarah," he said, "there are things you need to know, things your father knows, but maybe didn't explain well to you." My stomach turned to ice. "What things?" I managed to ask in a shaky voice. Robert took some folded papers from his jacket. He unfolded them carefully. They were the same pages I had seen in my daddy's pocket that day in Peoria. "This is our marriage contract," he said. Your father and I agreed on certain terms. Special terms. I looked at him, not understanding. Marriage contract? Special terms? Marriages didn't have special contracts. Or did they? Your father had debts, Robert continued in a calm, almost bored voice, as if he were talking about the weather. Big debts. I lent him money 2 years ago to plant, and he couldn't pay me back. I was going to take his land, but we reached an agreement. I cancel his debt completely. I also give him $500 as a dowry, and he gives me his daughter. You. The words entered my ears, but they made no sense. Gives me, as if I were a sack of corn, a cow, a piece of land. But there are conditions, Robert continued, staring at me with those cold eyes. I need an heir, a son. My first wife gave me 3 daughters. Nothing more. No sons. That's why I kicked her out. I need a son to inherit my lands, my business. That's the deal. I swallowed, my mouth as dry as sand. I don't understand, I whispered. Robert sighed, as if explaining it tired him. You have 3 years, he said with terrible clarity. 3 years to give me a son. If in 3 years there is no son, or if there are only girls like with my first wife, the contract is voided. I return you to your father, and your father has to pay me back double what I paid, $1,000. Do you understand what that means? Your family could never pay that. They would lose everything, their house, their land, everything. I felt the floor move beneath my feet. 3 years. A son. Return me like defective merchandise. Like a business transaction that gets canceled if the product isn't right. My daddy knew this? I managed to ask, though I already knew the answer. Of course he knew. He signed. It's right here. He showed me the papers, the signatures, the seals. My father's signature. My thumbprint from that morning. On a paper they never read to me, never explained. But I didn't know. My voice broke. The tears started to fall, and I couldn't stop them. Robert put the papers away carefully, folding them and putting them back in his jacket. Now you know, he said. So you'd better deliver. A wife who can't give me the son I need is useless to me. Understood? I nodded, unable to speak, tears soaking my new blouse. Good, he said. Now take off your clothes. We have to start tonight. There's no time to waste. What happened after those words is something I tried to erase from my memory for years. I only know that when he finished, I lay in that strange bed, in that strange house, in that strange life, and I understood the whole truth. I wasn't a wife. I was a bet, an investment. A broodmare who had 3 years to produce the right child or I would be sent back, with a penalty included. My father had sold me to pay his debts. My husband had bought me with a return policy. And I, Sarah, just 16 years old, had just discovered that my life had never been mine. It was a contract between men, and I was just the merchandise. I know. Many of you might be wondering, how could something like that possibly be legal? Back then, in these remote parts, a piece of paper signed by men held more weight than a woman's entire life. They called it the law, but for girls like us, it was nothing more than a cage made of paper and ink. For Sarah, this wasn't just a contract, it was a cage made of paper and ink. The life she dreamed of was replaced by a ticking clock, a cruel 3-year deadline. How does one even begin to face the first dawn of a life that is no longer their own? Let's see what the morning brought for her. That night, I cried in silence until I had no tears left. Outside, the prairie wind beat against the tin walls. Inside, I felt like the Sarah I had been was dying. I didn't know yet who I would have to become to survive this. I only knew that I had 3 years. 3 years before being returned like something defective, condemning my family to ruin. The clock had just started ticking. That night, it wasn't just my tears that fell. A part of me died too. The innocent girl, the Sarah who believed in good things, was left behind. The one who woke up the next morning wasn't that girl anymore. She was a soldier in a war she never chose to fight. But let's get back to the story, because what comes next is even harder. That night, the innocent Sarah, who believed in fairy tales, died. The one who woke up the next morning was someone else. A girl with an hourglass counting down her days, with an impossible mission, with the weight of her family's ruin on her shoulders, and with no one, absolutely no one, she could ask for help. I woke up with the sun streaming through the window, and for a second, I didn't know where I was. Then I remembered everything. The contract, the conditions, the 3 years. My body ached. My eyes were swollen from crying so much. Robert was no longer in the bed. I heard noises downstairs, voices. I got up slowly, every muscle protesting. I got dressed with trembling hands and went down the stairs. In the kitchen, there was an older woman, heavy-set, wearing an apron, preparing breakfast. She looked me up and down with eyes that were not kind. "You must be the new one," she said without smiling. "I'm Helen. I've worked here for 15 years. I clean, I cook, I help with whatever is needed." Robert was sitting at the table drinking coffee. "Sit down," he ordered me. Saturday. Helen put a plate with toast and a bowl of hot oatmeal in front of me. I ate in silence while Robert read the newspaper, ignoring me completely. When he finished his breakfast, he stood up. "Helen will show you your duties. I'll be back this afternoon." And he left without looking at me. Helen showed me the house. It was big, bigger than I had seen at night. 4 bedrooms upstairs, living room, dining room, big kitchen. Downstairs, there was running water. Imagine, a faucet in the kitchen where water came out without having to go to the well. There was a gas stove, in addition to the wood-burning stove. There was furniture, curtains, even a large radio in the living room. "Mr. Robert is very demanding," Helen told me while I looked at everything in amazement. "He likes the house clean, food on time, everything in order. His first wife, Mrs. Linda, never learned how to please him. That's why he kicked her out." Linda. I never met her, but she was like a ghost in that house. She was a warning, a glimpse of my own future if I failed. I often wondered where she and her 3 daughters went. We were the invisible women, erased from our own stories simply because we couldn't produce a son. She paused, looking at me with a mixture of pity and warning. "You're young. Maybe you can do better." I wanted to ask her about Linda, about the 3 daughters, about what had happened exactly, but Helen was already heading down the stairs, motioning for me to follow. She showed me where everything was kept, how Robert liked his food prepared, what days the milkman came, how the grinder for the corn worked. My head was spinning, trying to remember everything. The days began to fall into a routine. I'd get up at dawn, help Helen with breakfast, clean the house, prepare lunch, wash the clothes. In the afternoons, Robert would return from supervising his lands or doing business in town. We'd eat dinner in silence. Then we'd go up to the bedroom. Every night was the same. Robert fulfilled his part of the contract. Mechanical, cold, efficient. I endured it in silence, staring at the ceiling, counting the wooden beams. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. 6 beams on the bedroom ceiling. I counted them 1,000 times in those first weeks. Afterwards, he'd roll over and go to sleep. I'd stay awake, feeling the weight of the obligation, The clock ticking, 3 years. A son or ruin. The words spun in my head like a broken record. I started praying to every saint I knew. Dear Lord, help me. Blessed Mother, hear me. Jesus, please give me a son. Please, please, please. My mom wrote me a letter that arrived after a month. My daddy had bought 2 cows with part of the money Robert had given him. They had fixed the roof of the house. My younger siblings were going to school now. We are so proud of you, my mom wrote in her clumsy handwriting. Your sacrifice is helping the whole family. My father, even now, I still wonder. Did he do it because he was a terrible father, or just a desperate man clinging to the cruel rules of his time? Perhaps it was both. Sometimes, desperation and poverty can turn the people you love into the scariest strangers. I read that letter and felt sick. Sacrifice. Pride. Did she know the exact terms of the contract? Or had my daddy lied to her too? I didn't write back. What was I going to tell her? Mom, I was sold with a return policy. Mom, I have 3 years to produce a son, or you all lose everything. I couldn't. The weight of that secret was mine alone. 2 months passed. 3 months. My period arrived on time every month, and every time I saw the blood, I felt panic rise in my throat. I wasn't pregnant. The clock was still ticking. Robert didn't say anything, but I saw how he looked at me each morning, evaluating, calculating. The 4th month, my period didn't come. I waited a week, 2 weeks. My breasts were sore. I felt nauseous in the mornings. I told Helen in a low voice, I think I'm pregnant. She looked at me with something like compassion. Go see the midwife in town, Mrs. Dorothy. She'll check you. I went to see Mrs. Dorothy, an elderly woman with expert hands who touched my belly, asked me questions. Yes, my dear, she confirmed. You're expecting. About 2 months along, I'd say. I felt relief and terror at the same time. Pregnant. First step completed. But what if it was a girl? I had a 50% chance. The fear squeezed my ribs like a tight corset. When I told Robert that night, he nodded, satisfied. Good, it better be a boy. That was all he said. No congratulations, no hug, no joy. Just one transaction, closer to completion. The pregnancy was difficult. The nausea lasted for months. I got dizzy. I couldn't eat many things, but I still had to work, clean, cook. Helen helped me when she could, but Robert didn't accept excuses. You're pregnant, not sick, he'd say. My first wife had 3 daughters and never stopped working. His first wife, Linda. I never met her, but she haunted me like a ghost. The woman who had slept in this same bed, who had cooked in this kitchen, who had given birth to 3 daughters and no son, who had been thrown out like trash when she failed to perform her function. Where was she now? What had happened to her and her daughters? Robert never mentioned them, as if they had never existed. At 7 months pregnant, my belly was huge. I couldn't bend over properly to clean the floor. Helen looked at me with concern. You're very big, child. Maybe it's twins. Twins. The idea filled me with a crazy hope. Maybe 2 boys. Maybe fulfill the contract all at once. But hope is dangerous. It lifts you up so high that the fall hurts more. One night, at 8 months, the pains started. Contractions that doubled me over. Helen sent for Mrs. Dorothy. The labor lasted 14 hours. 14 hours of pain that made me scream, that made me sweat until the sheets were soaked, that made me think I was going to die right there. Finally, as the sun was beginning to rise, the baby was born. I heard the loud, healthy cry. It's a girl, Mrs. Dorothy said, wrapping the baby in a blanket. A beautiful, healthy girl. A girl. The world stopped. All the physical pain disappeared, replaced by a different pain, a pain that came from deep inside. A girl, not the son I needed. The clock was still ticking, and I had lost 9 months. Mrs. Dorothy placed the baby in my arms. She was tiny, red, wrinkled, with her eyes closed. Perfect, beautiful, innocent. And I, instead of feeling only love, also felt terror. Terror that this precious creature would be seen as a failure, as a mistake, as evidence that I was useless. Robert entered the room, looked at the baby. His face showed nothing. Not disappointment, not joy. Just a grimace of annoyance, like someone who sees they're being overcharged at the market. "A female," he said. "Well, you still have 2 years and 3 months. The next one better be a boy." And he left. He didn't ask how I was. He didn't ask his daughter's name. He didn't hold her. Nothing. He just calculated how much time was left on the contract and left. That night, holding Lily in my arms, I felt a love so fierce it physically hurt. I looked at her perfect little fingers, her soft wisps of hair, and my heart swelled. She was mine. She was beautiful, but as I looked at her, a cold wave of terror washed over me, chilling the warmth of my love. This precious child, my own flesh and blood, was also my first failure. In the eyes of this house, in the cold logic of the contract, her very existence was a mark against me. I was a broodmare that had produced the wrong color foal. I cried silent tears onto her blanket, my love for her and my fear for our future tangled into a painful, suffocating knot in my chest. She was my greatest joy, and terrifyingly, the first toll of my doom. Helen helped me in the following weeks. I was weak, bleeding a lot. My breasts ached with milk. The baby cried a lot, didn't sleep well. I looked at her and felt a desperate love, mixed with guilt. Guilt that she had been born into this situation. Guilt that I couldn't protect her. Guilt for seeing her as an obstacle instead of just as my daughter. I named her Lily, Lily Johnson, though Robert never even asked what name I had given her. When Lily was 3 months old, Robert started coming to my room again at night. My body still ached from childbirth. I was still breastfeeding, but the contract didn't wait. The clock was still ticking. 2 years left. I had to get pregnant again. I had to have a son. I begged every night. "Please, Lord, this time. This time a son, please." I couldn't fail again. I got pregnant quickly, 4 months after Lily's birth. My body had barely recovered, and I was expecting again. The nausea returned, worse than before. Lily was still so little, still needed so much, and I had to carry her while my belly grew again, while I worked, while I fulfilled all my duties. This pregnancy was different. I was more scared. Scared it would be another girl. Scared of what would happen if I failed again. Time was running out. I had already lost almost a year and a half. A year and a half of the contract remained. If this baby was a girl, I would have to try one more time. And if that third one was also a girl, I couldn't even think about it. The ruin. My family losing everything. Being returned like defective merchandise. The shame. The failure. Robert was more tense, rougher, as if he also felt the pressure of the clock. He yelled at me for small things. Food that wasn't exactly how he liked it. A floor that wasn't clean enough. Once, he threw his soup bowl at me because it was too salty. Useless, he told me. Just like Linda. Useless. Helen cleaned up in silence while I picked up the broken pieces of the bowl, my tears mixing with the spilled soup. Lily cried in her cradle. Everything was a disaster. At 8 months of this second pregnancy, the pains started again. Again, Mrs. Dorothy. Another long, painful labor. I pushed and screamed and begged, "Please, God, let it be a boy. Please, please, please." The baby was born at dawn, smaller than Lily, weaker. Mrs. Dorothy wrapped him up quickly, her face worried. "It's another girl," she said in a low voice. "And she's a bit weak. We need to keep her warm." Another girl, 2 girls, 1 year of the contract left. I put the baby to my chest. She was pale, skinny. Her cry was weak. Helen looked at me with pity. "What are you going to name her?" "Grace," I said. "Grace Mary, because I needed grace. I needed hope. I needed a miracle." Robert came in, saw the baby. His face darkened like a storm over the prairie. Another female. It wasn't a question, it was an accusation. 2 females, just like Linda. Linda had 3 females, all useless. "You're heading down the same path." "There's still time," I said with a trembling voice, daring to speak. "I still can." 1 year. He cut me off. 1 year to get pregnant, carry the full pregnancy, and give birth to a son. Do you know how tight that is? Time is running out, Sarah. And if you fail, your family will suffer the consequences. Do you understand? $1,000. Your father will never be able to pay that. He'll lose everything. Because of you. Because of me. As if I could control the sex of my children. As if it were my fault they were born girls. But that's how it was. It was all my fault. Science, biology, none of that mattered. I was the one failing. I was the defective merchandise. Grace was weak. She didn't eat well. She cried all the time. At 2 weeks, she got sick. High fever. Mrs. Dorothy came, gave her herbs, performed remedies. Nothing worked. "We have to take her to the hospital in Peoria," she said, worried. "This child is very sick." I begged Robert, "Please, we have to take her to the hospital. She could die." He looked at me with cold eyes. "And if she dies, she dies. After all, she's no use to me. She's a female. I lose nothing." Those words were seared into my soul like a branding iron. I lose nothing. About his own daughter, his blood, and he lost nothing if she died because she was a girl. In that moment, something inside me broke. Something that had been bending under the weight but hadn't yet snapped. It snapped. And when something breaks, it never goes back to being the same, even if you glue it. There are moments that change everything, and this was one of them. Those words, "I lose nothing," didn't just break Sarah's spirit. They ignited a fire. A mother's instinct to protect her young is one of the most powerful forces on earth, and what she decides to do in the dead of that night will set her on a path from which there is no turning back. I grabbed Grace. I grabbed Lily. And that very night, while Robert slept, drunk after drinking all afternoon, I packed a small bag. Clothes for the girls, diapers. The little money I had managed to hide over the months, dollar by dollar, hidden in a can under the mattress, $23. That's all I had. Helen saw me in the kitchen at 3 inches the morning. She stood in the doorway, watching me. "You're leaving?" she asked, in a very low voice. I nodded, unable to speak. Grace was asleep in my arms, burning with fever. Lily was on my back in a shawl. Helen went to her room and came back. She pressed something into my hand. "More bills." $30, she whispered. "It's all I have. Go far away. Go where he can't find you, because when he wakes up and sees you're gone, he'll look for you, and it won't be for the girls. It'll be because of the contract. Because if you leave, he loses his investment." I hugged her with one arm, the girls between us. "Thank you," was all I could say. "Go now," she urged me. "The first bus to Peoria leaves at 5. If you hurry, you'll make it." I left that house, walking fast in the prairie darkness. The cold cut my face. Lily was heavy on my back. Grace burned in my arms. $53 in my pocket. 2 daughters, no plan. Just the instinct of an animal mother protecting her young. I didn't look back. If I looked back, I might regret it. I might remember the contract, the debt, what would happen to my family. I might convince myself to go back. But Robert's words kept ringing in my head. I lose nothing. About his sick daughter. About my baby dying in my arms. He lost nothing. Then I wasn't losing anything by running away either. I was losing a life that was never mine. I was losing a marriage that was a business transaction. I was losing a future that was just a countdown to being returned. I walked toward the highway where the buses passed. The sky was just beginning to lighten. Grace coughed weakly against my chest. Lily slept on my back. My legs were trembling from fear and cold and exhaustion, but I kept walking, because for the first time in 2 years I was making a decision. For the first time I was choosing. You see, sometimes freedom doesn't start with a great victory. It starts with a single step. A step out the door, a step away from fear, a step onto a path where you don't know the end. But you know for certain you can never turn back. I was choosing my daughters over the contract. I was choosing life over a slow death. I was choosing the fear of the unknown over the certainty of horror. When I reached the highway and saw the bus headlights approaching in the dawn, I took a deep breath. The Sarah I had been the one who accepted, who obeyed, who endured in silence that Sarah stayed behind in that house in Bloomington. The one who got on that bus with her 2 daughters and $53 was someone else. Someone who didn't know what was going to happen but was willing to find out. Even if it meant Robert would hunt for me. Even if it meant my family would suffer the consequences. Even if it meant facing something worse than what I was leaving behind. It didn't matter anymore. My daughters were worth more than any contract, and no one, ever again, was going to tell me that he lost nothing if they died. The bus arrived in Peoria just as the sun was beginning to warm things up. I got off, my legs numb with cold and fear. Lily still asleep on my back, Grace burning with fever in my arms. The bus station was a chaos of people, vendors shouting, buses starting up with black smoke, the smell of fried food mixed with diesel and garbage. I stood there, lost in the middle of so many people, not knowing what to do. I didn't know anyone in Peoria. I had nowhere to go. I only knew I needed to find a hospital, fast, before Grace got any worse. "Are you lost, honey?" An older woman selling hot coffee from a cart asked me. I nodded, the tears starting to fall without permission. "My baby is very sick. I need a hospital." The woman came closer, touched Grace's forehead, and her face turned serious. "She's burning up. St. John's Hospital is 6 blocks away. Walk straight down this avenue. I'll watch your other girl if you want, so you can go faster." I looked into her eyes. Could I trust this stranger? Did I have a choice? Grace coughed weakly. Her breathing sounded strange. There was no time. "Thank you, but I'll take them both," I said. I couldn't risk losing Lily, too. I walked those 6 blocks almost running, even though my legs were shaking. Lily was so heavy. Grace was getting hotter. I reached the hospital entrance, sweating and trembling at the same time. A nurse at the door saw me and immediately knew something was wrong. "Come quickly," she said, guiding me inside. The emergency room smelled of disinfectant and sickness. There were people everywhere, children crying, adults coughing. The nurse took me to a small room where a young doctor examined Grace. He listened to her chest, her heart, checked her throat. His face grew more and more worried. "She has pneumonia," he said finally. "She's severely dehydrated. She needs to be admitted. IV, antibiotics." "How many days has she been like this?" 3 days, I whispered. "Maybe 4. Why didn't you bring her in sooner?" His tone was reprimanding, as if I'd had a choice, as if I hadn't begged to have her taken. "I couldn't," was all I said. I wasn't going to explain my life to this doctor who looked at me as if I were a bad mother. "Well, we have to admit her now. Do you have insurance? Do you have money to pay?" My stomach clenched. "I have $53. The doctor sighed. "Admission costs more than that. But this is an emergency. We'll admit her anyway, and we'll figure out payment later. Give me your information." That's when fear paralyzed me. My information? If I gave my real name, my information, Robert could find me. Hospitals kept records. He had money, he had connections. He would look for me, and when he found me— "Sarah Quispy," I said quickly, using only my mom's last name, omitting the Jenkins and the Johnson, "from Havenwood." I lied about the address too. I couldn't leave a trace. The doctor wrote it down without paying much attention. He called a nurse, who took Grace to another room. I wanted to follow them, but the nurse stopped me. "You have to stay here. We'll take care of her. Come back tomorrow morning." "Tomorrow? But she's my baby. I need to be with her." Panic rose in my throat. "There are no rooms for parents to stay, and you have your other child. You can't be here with two. Come back tomorrow." And she left with my Grace in her arms, my baby disappearing down a cold white hallway. Lily started to cry on my back, finally awake, confused. I stood in that hallway, not knowing what to do. I had made it to the hospital. They had admitted Grace. But now what? Where was I going to sleep? How was I going to eat? $53 wouldn't cover a motel, or food, or anything. I left the hospital, dazed. Peoria by day was even bigger than it had seemed at dawn. Wide avenues, 2- and 3-story buildings, shops, markets, so many people. I felt so small, so lost. And one 8-year-old girl with one daughter dying in the hospital, another on her back, and a marriage I had fled. I walked aimlessly for a while until I reached a large market. The smell of food made me realize I hadn't eaten anything since the night before. Lily was hungry too. She reached her little hands out toward the bread stalls. I bought 2 small rolls for $1. We sat in a corner of the market to eat. Lily chewed happily, oblivious to everything. I tried to swallow, but the roll felt like a rock in my throat. "Are you all right, young lady?" A woman selling vegetables at the next stall was looking at me with concern. She was heavy-set, with a stained apron and a kind face. "You look lost." And just like that, I broke. The tears started pouring out, and I couldn't stop them. I told her everything. The words tumbled out. The contract, the conditions, the 2 daughters, the sick baby, the escape. Everything came out. Years of silence, breaking in that market with this stranger who listened without interrupting. When I finished, she shook her head, her eyes moist. "Oh, child, men and their contracts. As if women were cattle." She wiped her eyes on her apron. "Look, I'm Barbara. I have a little room next to my house that's empty. It's not much, but it has a roof and a bed. You can stay there until you get on your feet. I won't charge you rent for now. Just help me sell here at the market, and we'll call it even." I looked at her, unable to believe what I was hearing. "Why? Why would you help me?" Barbara smiled sadly. "Because every woman I know has a contract hanging over her head, child. Some are written on paper, like yours. Others are unwritten, in the rules men make, in the way they look at us. I see the same fear in your eyes that I saw in my own sister's before her husband broke her spirit over not giving him a son. I couldn't help her then, but I can help you now. We women, we are all we have. That man who bought you deserves to see what a woman he couldn't own can do." She got up from her stool. "Come on, I'll take you to the house. It's just 3 blocks away." That night, I slept in the little room Barbara lent me. It was tiny, barely fit a bed and a small table. The walls were unpainted plaster, the floor was dirt, but there was a thick blanket. There was a door that locked, there was a roof that didn't leak, there was safety. Lily and I cuddled together on the bed. She fell asleep quickly, sucking her thumb. I stayed awake, thinking about Grace alone in that hospital, wondering if Robert had woken up yet, if he was already looking for me. The next morning, I went back to the hospital just as it was getting light. The nurse on duty took me to see Grace. She was in a metal crib, hooked up to an IV, so tiny amidst the wires and tubes, but she was breathing better. She still had a fever, but less than yesterday. She's responding to the antibiotics, the nurse said. This baby is a fighter, like her mom, like she had to be to survive. I spent the day there, sitting next to her crib, Lily playing on the floor with a little rag doll Barbara had given her. The nurses let me stay, even though it wasn't allowed. I think they saw my desperation and had compassion. On the third day, they told me Grace could go home soon, maybe in 2 more days. But I had to pay something on the bill. $200, they said. I had 48 now. After buying food these past few days, I was short $152, a fortune. I don't have that money, I told them, my voice trembling. Then your baby can't leave, the hospital administrator, a sharp woman with glasses, replied. The hospital isn't a charity. Someone has to pay. I left there with a heavy heart. How was I going to get $150 in 2 days? I went back to Barbara, desperate. She looked at me thoughtfully. We can make breakfast burritos to sell, she said. Burritos sell well in the morning. If we make enough, if we sell everything, maybe we can scrape it together. That night we worked until dawn. Barbara taught me her recipe. Tortillas, a filling of ground beef and potato, hot oil. My hands moved quickly, kneading, filling, folding. We made 200 breakfast burritos. Lily slept in a basket nearby. At 4 inches the morning, we finished, exhausted, but with mountains of burritos ready. At 5, we went out to sell. Barbara showed me the best spots. The corner by the hospital where people arrived early. The bus station where passengers were hungry. The entrance to the textile mill where night shifts were ending. Hot burritos. Freshly made. $1 each. I shouted, my voice loud, losing my shame because my daughter's life was at stake. We sold them all 200 burritos in 3 hours. I couldn't believe it. We counted the money. $200, minus what the ingredients cost. We had $120 in profit. We split it in half, because Barbara had provided her kitchen, her pan, her oil, $60 for me. Tomorrow we make more, Barbara said, and the day after. We'll get what you need. And that's how it went. 3 nights in a row making burritos. 3 mornings selling them. I learned to shout loud, to approach people, to make them buy. I learned I had strength I didn't know I had. Lily was tied to my back all day, but she didn't cry as much anymore. She got used to the movement, the noise of the market. On the 6th day after arriving in Peoria, I had the full $200. I went to the hospital, almost running. Here it is, I told the administrator, putting the bills on her desk. $200. Now give me back my daughter. Grace left the hospital that same day. She was still skinny, pale, but alive, breathing well, drinking her milk. The nurses gave me instructions. Medicine for 7 more days, keep her warm, bring her for a checkup in 2 weeks. I nodded to everything, holding my baby tight against my chest. I was never letting her go again. Barbara organized a small meal to celebrate. Bean soup, potatoes with cheese. She even made punch, A toast to Grace, who is a fighter, she said, raising her glass. And to Sarah, who is one too. I drank the punch, feeling something strange in my chest, something I hadn't felt in years. Maybe it was pride. I had saved my daughter. I had gotten the money. I had survived a week in an unknown city, alone with 2 babies, without help from any man, only with the kindness of another woman and my own working hands. Maybe I was going to make it. But that night, just as I was starting to breathe easy, Barbara came running in from the street. Her face was scared. "Sarah, there was a man asking for you in the market. An older man in an expensive jacket, asking if anyone had seen a young woman with 2 small babies, offering money for information." My blood ran cold. Robert. He had found me. Or was close to finding me. "What did you say?" I asked, my voice barely coming out. "Nothing. I told him I didn't know who he was talking about. But Sarah? There are other people in the market. People who don't know you, who need money. If he keeps asking, offering dollars, someone is going to talk. Someone saw you selling burritos. Someone saw you with me." She was right. Peoria wasn't that big. I had been visible these past few days, shouting on corners, selling at the bus station. Someone would connect the dots. It was only a matter of time. "What am I going to do?" I whispered, tears threatening to fall again. Just when I thought I was safe. Just when I thought I had escaped. Barbara grabbed my hands. "Tomorrow morning, you're going to see my cousin Rachel. She's a lawyer. She works at a women's support center. She helps with cases of violence, abuse, these kinds of things. Maybe she can help you with the legal side. Because if that man finds you, he's not going to let you go just like that. He has that contract. He'll take you to court. Court, contract, lawyer. Words I never thought would be part of my life. I just wanted peace. I just wanted to raise my daughters. I just wanted to not be merchandise with a return policy, but I wasn't going to have peace. Not yet. Because Robert wasn't going to let his investment go without a fight. He had bought me. He had papers to prove it. And when you're bought, the buyers think they can do whatever they want with you. I didn't sleep that night. I held my 2 daughters, one on each side, feeling their warm little bodies, listening to their breathing. Grace survived. Lily was growing strong. I had fled. I had found work. I had made friends. But the battle was just beginning, because now Robert knew where to look, and I had to prepare to face him. Not with physical strength I didn't have. Not with money I didn't have. I had to face him with the law, with the truth, with that horrible contract exposed to the light so everyone could see what it was, the sale of a person. Slavery, with notarized papers. I didn't know if I would win. I didn't know if the law would protect me or condemn me. In 1974, in America, women still didn't have many rights. Marriage contracts were legal. Fathers could decide for their daughters. Husbands had power over their wives. But I had to try. For Lily, for Grace, for me. The next morning, as the sun was just beginning to rise over the prairie, I got up, dressed the girls in their best little clothes, braided my hair tightly, put on my cleanest shawl, and walked toward the women's support center Barbara had told me about. I walked with my daughters in my arms, with fear in my stomach, but with my head held high. I was going to fight, and this time I wasn't alone. The women's support center was in an old 2-story house near the main square. It had a hand-painted sign that said United Women of Peoria. I knocked on the door with a trembling hand, Lily on my back, Grace in my arms. A young woman opened it. She looked about 25, with short hair, wearing jeans instead of a skirt. Something strange to see back then. "How can we help you?" she asked with a kind voice. I'm looking for Miss Rachel. Barbara from the market sent me. Oh, Miss Green, come in. She's with someone, but she'll be done soon. She led me into a small room with plastic chairs and posters on the walls. Women have rights, said one. You are not alone, said another. There were photos of rural women, of marches, of meetings. I waited 20 minutes that felt like hours. Finally, a woman came out of the back room. She was older than me, maybe 35, wearing a skirt and formal blouse, large glasses, a folder in her hand. She looked serious, but not harsh. You're Sarah? She asked. I nodded. I'm Rachel Green, attorney. Barbara told me you'd be coming. Come into my office. Her office was a small room with a desk full of papers, shelves of thick books, a chair for her, and 2 for visitors. I sat down, settling Grace on my lap. Lily sat on the floor, playing with her fingers. Tell me everything, Rachel said, taking out a notepad. From the beginning. And I told her. Again, the story tumbled out. The contract, the conditions, the 2 daughters, the escape. Rachel wrote quickly, asking precise questions. Did you sign the contract? No, I just put my thumbprint. Did they read the full contract to you beforehand? No. Did you know about the clauses regarding a son? No, not until my wedding night. Do you have a copy of the contract? No. When I finished, Rachel put down her pen and looked me directly in the eyes. Sarah, what they did to you is atrocious. Morally, humanly, it's horrible. But legally, she paused, searching for the right words. Legally, it's complicated. In 1974, marriage contracts are legal. Fathers can negotiate terms. Wives owe obedience to their husbands. If there are documents signed by your father and your husband, notarized with witnesses, then legally, it's valid. I felt the floor open up beneath me. So, I can't do anything? I have to go back to him? I didn't say that. Rachel leaned forward. I said it's complicated, not impossible. There are aspects of the contract we can challenge. First, you were a minor when you got married. How old were you exactly? 16. 16. The age of majority is 21. Technically, you needed parental permission, which you had. But we can argue you didn't have full legal capacity to consent to complex contractual terms. Second, they didn't read the full contract to you, which violates the principle of informed consent. Third, the clauses about producing a son or being returned reduce you as a person to a reproductive function, which could be argued as contrary to human dignity. Her words were complicated, but I began to understand. There were cracks in the wall. Small, but cracks nonetheless. But there's a big problem, Rachel continued, her face growing more serious. If he sues you for breach of contract, for abandoning the marital home, for taking the children without his permission, he has legal standing. Technically, you are his wife. The daughters are legally his too. He can demand that you return or that you pay the debt established in the contract. $1,000. Do you have $1,000? I shook my head. I barely had $10 left after paying the hospital. So, if he takes you to court and you lose the case, you and your family would be in debt. Your father could lose his land. It's a very difficult situation. Rachel sighed. But Sarah, listen to me carefully. You did the right thing by fleeing. That man was willing to let your baby die. That's criminal negligence. And the clauses about returning you if you didn't produce a son, they are degrading. We have grounds to fight. So what do? I asked, my voice as small as a mouse. First, we need to get a copy of that contract. If he sues you, he'll present it as evidence. We need to see it, analyze every clause, find the weak points. Second, We need testimony from people who can corroborate your version. That housekeeper, Helen, maybe? Third, we need to document the medical negligence with your baby, the hospital notes, the doctor's testimony. And fourth, she paused. Fourth, you need to be prepared, because this is going to be public. It's going to be a trial. People will talk. It will be hard. I nodded, swallowing my fear. I'm ready. I can't go back to him. I'd rather fight. Rachel smiled for the first time. Good. Then we'll fight. Pro bono, by the way. We work for free for women without resources. This is exactly the type of case we fight for. I left there with a small piece of paper with Rachel's name, her address, and the date of our next meeting in 3 days. I felt scared, but also something else. Something like hope. I wasn't alone. There was someone who believed me, who was helping me, who knew the law. I went back to Barbara's and told her everything. She nodded, satisfied. My cousin is good. If anyone can help you, it's her. That afternoon, we worked together selling vegetables at the market. I was learning quickly how to pick the best potatoes, how to weigh without being cheated, how to haggle with the ladies who wanted everything cheaper. 2 almost peaceful days passed. I worked, took care of my daughters. Grace was getting better every day. At night, we made burritos that I sold early in the morning. The money barely covered expenses, but it was enough. I started to think that maybe Robert had gotten tired of looking, that maybe he'd leave me in peace. How naive I still was. On the 3rd day, early in the morning, I was selling burritos on the corner by the bus station when I saw him. Robert, getting out of his Ford truck, looking around, asking the newspaper vendor a question. My heart stopped. I grabbed my basket of burritos and started walking quickly in the opposite direction, Lily on my back, trying to disappear into the crowd. Sarah! His voice cut through the noise of the station. Sarah, I see you. Stay right there. I started to run. People looked at me strangely. A girl running with a baby and a basket, burritos falling out. I heard his heavy footsteps behind me, fast. Sarah, stop right now. I turned a corner, then another. My breath was burning. Lily was crying, scared, on my back. The burritos rolled on the ground. I reached a store and ducked inside. Please, I begged the woman at the counter. My husband is chasing me. Hide me. The woman saw the terror on my face and nodded quickly. She put me behind the counter, covering me with a blanket. Stay quiet. Lily was crying, and I tried to calm her, whispering, my heart pounding so hard I thought it would burst from my chest. I heard Robert come in. Did you see a girl with a baby come in here? The woman answered calmly. No, sir. Nobody's come in here. Robert grumbled something and left. The woman waited 5 minutes before letting me come out of my hiding place. Thank you, I whispered, shaking all over. She shook her head. Go out the back door. And be careful. That man looks dangerous. I ran out, taking streets I didn't know, getting lost in the maze of Peoria until I was sure he wasn't following me. I finally reached Barbara's house, breathless, with no burritos, with Lily crying and me on the verge of collapse. Barbara hugged me tight. There, you're safe here. But we both knew it wasn't true. Robert had seen me. He knew I was in Peoria. It was only a matter of time before he found me again. You can run from a place, but it's much harder to run from a man who believes he owns you. That brief, terrifying chase through the market proved that Peoria wasn't a sanctuary. It was just a new battlefield. Sarah's small taste of freedom was about to be put to the ultimate test, a test she could not run from. That night, back in the little room, with my daughters sleeping on either side of me, I truly hit rock bottom. For a fleeting moment, I wanted to give up. I thought about grabbing the girls and just running again, to another town, another state, changing our names and living forever in the shadows. Wouldn't that be easier than facing him? Than fighting a battle with papers and laws I didn't understand? The fear was a physical thing, a cold hand gripping my throat. I was just a girl from the prairie. Who was I to think I could fight a man like Robert? But then I looked at Grace's peaceful face, her chest rising and falling with each healthy breath, a breath I had fought for. I looked at Lily, who trusted me completely. Running meant they would always be the daughters of a woman in hiding. Fighting. Fighting meant they could be the daughters of a woman who was free. The fear was still there, but beneath it, a tiny, hard ember of anger began to glow. He would not make me a ghost in my own life. Fear can paralyze you. It can make you want to run forever. But at the very bottom of that fear, sometimes you find something else. Anger. It's not the kind of anger that destroys, but the kind that says, I am worth more than this. And it was that flame of anger that kept me warm in my darkest night. You have to go to Rachel right now, Barbara said. Tell her what happened. They have to speed everything up. I ran to the support center. Rachel was in a meeting, but when they told her it was urgent, she saw me immediately. I told her about the encounter, the chase. Her face turned grim. This changes things. If he knows where you are, he'll act fast. He's probably already with a lawyer preparing the lawsuit. She picked up the phone on her desk, dialed a number. Judge Davis's office? This is Rachel Green. Yes, I need to schedule an emergency hearing. A case of domestic violence and negligence. Yes, I have the victim here with me. Tomorrow, if possible. Thank you. Yes, at 10. She hung up and looked at me. Tomorrow, we're going to request a temporary restraining order. I need you to tell me everything again, with all the details, and we're going to prepare your testimony. We spent 4 hours there. Rachel writing everything, asking me questions, preparing me for what was coming. In the hearing, the judge will ask you things. You have to answer clearly, strongly, looking him in the eye. No maybes or I thinks, just the facts. Understand? I nodded, though inside I was terrified. I barely slept that night. Barbara lent me a more formal skirt and a clean shawl for the hearing. You have to look respectable, she told me. Judges are old and sexist. You have to look like a decent woman, not like some crazy girl who abandoned her husband. She braided my hair tightly. She helped me dress the girls in their best little outfits. I looked in the mirror and didn't recognize myself. In 2 weeks, I had aged years. I had deep dark circles. My face was thinner, my hands rough from work, but there was something in my eyes that wasn't there before. Something hard, something that had learned to fight. At 9 inches the morning the next day, Rachel picked me up. We went to the courthouse, a gray building with columns and the smell of old paper. There were people everywhere, lawyers with briefcases, police officers, families waiting. Rachel guided me to a small room. Wait here. When they call you, take a deep breath and come in. I'll be by your side the whole time. At 10:30 they called us. Case of Johnson v. Johnson, a secretary said. My stomach clenched. Johnson v. Johnson. Robert against me. We entered a room with a large desk, bookshelves, an American flag. The judge was an older man with white hair, a serious face, wearing a black robe. And there, sitting on the other side of the room, was Robert, in a new suit, well-groomed. And next to him, a fat lawyer with a leather briefcase. He looked at me with cold, calculating eyes. I wanted to disappear, to become invisible. But Rachel squeezed my arm. Steady, she whispered. Head high. The judge banged his gavel. We'll begin. Mr. Johnson, your attorney has the floor. Robert's lawyer stood up. Your Honor, my client seeks the return of his lawful wife, who abandoned the marital home without just cause, taking with her 2 minors without paternal consent. Furthermore, he demands the fulfillment of the marriage contract, duly notarized and registered, or, failing that, the payment of $1,000 established as a penalty for breach of contract. We have all the documents to prove it. He placed a verru-daced, thick folder on the judge's desk. The judge opened it, began to read. His face showed nothing. He read for several minutes that felt like an eternity. Finally, he looked up. "Miss Green, does your client have a defense?" Rachel stood up. "Yes, Your Honor. My client fled for reasons of extreme necessity. Her 2-month-old baby was gravely ill, and Mr. Johnson refused to provide medical care, stating verbatim that the child didn't matter to him because she was female. This constitutes criminal negligence and endangerment of a minor's life. Furthermore, the marriage contract in question contains clauses that reduce my client to a reproductive function, violating her human dignity. She was 16 when she signed. She received no full explanation of the terms and only placed her thumbprint without reading the document. We request that the contract be declared null and void, and that a restraining order be granted against Mr. Johnson." The judge looked at both of us, then at Robert. "Is it true that your daughter was sick, and you refused to take her to the hospital?" Robert stood up. "Your Honor, I did not refuse. I simply considered it unnecessary to spend money on a doctor for a simple cold. Women always exaggerate these things. The girl wasn't that sick. The girl had pneumonia and was hospitalized for 6 days," Rachel interrupted. "I have the documents from St. John's Hospital to prove it. If the mother hadn't acted, the baby would have died." The judge asked to see the medical documents, read them in silence. His face was still serious, but I saw something change in his eyes. "Mr. Johnson," he said finally, "these clauses in your contract about producing a male heir within a set time frame or returning the wife are unusual. Explain the reasoning." Robert straightened up, speaking in a confident voice as if it were the most normal thing in the world. "Your Honor, I need a male heir for my lands. My first wife gave me only daughters, so I had to find a new wife. Sarah's father had debts with me. We reached a fair business agreement for everyone. I cancel his debt. He gives me his daughter. She has 3 years to give me the son I need. If she doesn't deliver, the deal is off. Simple. Everything is legal, notarized, signed by both parties." The silence in that room was as heavy as stone. The judge stared at Robert as if he couldn't believe what he was hearing. "You describe your wife as part of a business agreement?" "It's a marriage contract, Your Honor. Legal, under current law." The judge took off his glasses, rubbed his eyes. He looked at the contract again. He looked at Robert. He looked at me, with my 2 daughters in my arms. I saw something in his face. Maybe it was disgust. Maybe it was weariness from seeing the same story of women treated like property. I don't know what it was, but something changed in that moment. "I'm going to take a recess," the judge said. 30 minutes. Then I will give my decision." He banged the gavel and left the room. Rachel squeezed my hand. "It went well," she whispered. I saw his face. Judge Davis is old, but he has a heart. I think he saw the absurdity of all this. Robert and his lawyer were talking in low voices in their corner. Robert glared at me from time to time with barely contained fury. I held my daughters and prayed, "Please, God, please let this judge see the truth. Please protect me." The 30 minutes were the longest of my life. When Judge Davis re-entered the room, his face was more serious than before. He sat, arranged his papers, put on his glasses. The silence was so heavy you could cut it with a knife. My hands were shaking so much that Grace started to fuss in my arms. Rachel put her hand on my shoulder. "Calm," she whispered. The judge cleared his throat. I have reviewed all the documentation presented, the marriage contract, the medical documents from St. John's Hospital, the written testimonies, and I have heard from both parties. He took a long pause. My heart was pounding so hard I thought everyone could hear it. Mr. Johnson, the judge continued, looking directly at Robert, you presented a marriage contract that, while it meets the basic legal formalities of notarization and registration, contains clauses that this court finds deeply problematic. The clauses establishing a 3-year probationary period to produce specific male offspring, with a financial penalty in case of failure, reduce the marriage to a purely commercial transaction and the wife to a reproductive instrument. Robert stiffened in his chair, his face starting to turn red. His lawyer whispered something to him, but he ignored it. Furthermore, the judge continued, the medical evidence shows that one of the minors, barely 2 months old, was in grave danger of death from pneumonia, and that you, Mr. Johnson, refused to provide necessary medical attention. This is not a difference of opinion on child rearing. This is negligence that could have resulted in the death of an infant. That woman exaggerated everything. Robert burst out, jumping from his chair. His lawyer tried to calm him, but he pushed him aside. That girl wasn't that sick. She stole my children without my permission. She broke the contract her father signed. I paid good money for her. The silence that followed was like thunder. The last words hung in the air. I paid good money for her. There it was, the naked truth. Not a wife, but purchased goods. In that moment, the mask was gone. With his own words, I paid good money for her, Robert revealed the cold truth of his heart for the entire court to see. It was no longer about legal clauses. It was about the sale of a human being. The entire future for Sarah and her girls now rests on how one man, the judge, will react to this horrifying confession. The judge slowly took off his glasses. When he spoke, his voice was as cold as prairie ice. You just referred to your wife as something you bought. Robert seemed to realize what he had said, but it was too late. It's a figure of speech, Your Honor. The contract stipulates financial compensation. You paid for a person, the judge interrupted. You described her as merchandise. In your own testimony, you have just confirmed what the defense argued, that this was not a marriage, but a sale. He stood up, his black robe making him look larger. I have seen many things in 30 years as a judge. I have seen marriage contracts with dowries, with exchanges of land, with financial agreements. But never in my career have I seen something as degrading as this. He grabbed the contract and held it up. This document is an affront to human dignity. It doesn't matter how many seals it has, how many signatures. It is immoral and, in my interpretation, unconstitutional under the law which states that the human person is the supreme end of society and the state. My breath caught. Was he saying what I thought he was? Saying, therefore, the judge declared in a firm voice, this court declares the marriage contract presented by Mr. Robert Johnson null and void. Null, due to violation of fundamental rights, due to lack of informed consent from the defendant, who was a minor, and for containing clauses that reduce a person to an object. The civil marriage is annulled. Miss Sarah Jenkins is free from all contractual obligations and owes no financial sum to Mr. Johnson or any third party related to this contract. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. Free, null. I owed nothing. Furthermore, the judge continued, exclusive custody of the minors, Lily and Grace Johnson, is granted to their mother, Sarah Jenkins. Mr. Johnson may request supervised visitation if he wishes, but under no circumstances is he permitted to approach Miss Jenkins or the minors without supervision from a competent authority. A restraining order is issued for 6 months, renewable. This is an injustice, Robert shouted, his face red with fury. "I have rights. I paid. Her father signed. You can't take what is mine." "Mr. Johnson," the judge's voice was steel. "People are not property. His daughter was not his to sell, and she was not yours to buy. The children are not yours to claim as an investment. If you continue to disrupt this courtroom, I will have you removed for contempt." He turned to his secretary. "Let all this be entered into the record. This ruling is final." He banged his gavel 3 times. "Court is adjourned." Robert was still shouting as his lawyer tried to drag him out. "This isn't over. I'll appeal. I'll go to a higher court. That money was mine. That girl belongs to me." Rachel hugged me tight. "We won, Sarah. We won." I couldn't speak. Tears were streaming down. But for the first time in years, they were tears of relief. Free. The word echoed in my head. Free. We walked out of the courthouse into the daylight. There were people on the steps, lawyers, families. Some people looked at us curiously. Rachel guided me toward the street. "Let's go to my office. We need to get certified copies of the ruling, and I need to explain a few things." In her office, while we waited for the secretary to bring the copies, Rachel explained, "Sarah, this was an important victory, very important. But you have to understand something. Robert is going to be furious. He'll feel like he's been robbed. Men like him don't accept losing. You have to be very careful. The restraining order helps, but it's not foolproof." I nodded, still in shock. "And my family? Does my daddy have to pay anything?" "No." The judge declared the entire contract null, including the penalties. "Your father owes nothing. But," she paused, "Sarah, your father was complicit in this. He sold you. That's not going to disappear. You'll have to decide if you want to have a relationship with him or not. My daddy, the man who carried me when I was a baby, who taught me to count sheep, who also beat me when I didn't obey. The man who signed papers selling his daughter to pay his debts. Could I forgive that? I didn't know. Not yet. That night, in the little room Barbara lent me, I sat on the bed with my 2 daughters sleeping beside me. I looked at the papers Rachel had given me. Ruling of annulment, restraining order, exclusive custody. Words on official paper that meant freedom. The next day, Barbara came running with a newspaper. "Sarah, look!" On page 3, there was an article. "Judge Annal's marriage over degrading contract," the headline said. The article told the story, without using my full name, but with enough details. It talked about the contract, the son clauses, the judge's ruling. "This is good," Rachel said when I showed her the paper later. "It's good that it's public. Because you're not the only one, Sarah. There are other women in similar situations. Arranged marriages with conditions. Women treated as investments. This case can help change things." And it did. In the following weeks, women started coming to the support center. Women from rural communities, women with stories similar to mine. One had been loaned to her husband's brother because the first couldn't have children. Another had a contract specifying that if she didn't provide a son in 2 years, she had to work for free in her father-in-law's field for 5 years to compensate. Another had been traded for a cow and 3 sheep, literally, with a notarized document that said in exchange for valued livestock. Each story broke my heart, but it also made me feel less alone. It hadn't just been me. It was a practice, a system. Women as merchandise in communities where the laws arrived late and weak. Rachel organized meetings, brought all these women together. There were 12 of us at first, then 20, then 30. We sat in a circle at the support center and told our stories. We cried together, hugged each other, gave each other strength. "We're going to do something bigger," Rachel said in one of those meetings. "We're going to document all these cases. We're going to present them to the authorities. We're going to fight for a law that explicitly prohibits these practices, that punishes the men who buy women and the fathers who sell them. And that's how it all started. The case, which had just been mine, became a movement. Newspapers wrote articles. Radio stations interviewed us. Rachel gave talks in communities, explaining women's rights. I, who barely knew how to read, was suddenly in meetings, telling my story, helping other women fill out forms, accompanying them to their own hearings. It wasn't easy. There was resistance. Men in the communities said we were destroying traditions. Authorities who didn't want to listen. Judges who weren't like Judge Davis, who dismissed the cases. But we kept going. Because every woman freed was a victory. Every contract annulled was a step forward. Robert, meanwhile, disappeared. He tried to appeal the ruling, but it was rejected. He tried to file criminal charges against me for kidnapping the children, but it didn't go anywhere. Finally, I heard, he moved to another state, maybe to find another poor girl to buy, maybe to hide from the shame. I never heard from him again. I didn't want to. My family was more complicated. My mom sent me a letter saying she was happy I was okay, but that my daddy was furious, humiliated that the contract had been annulled publicly, that the whole town knew he had sold his daughter. He says you made him look like a criminal, my mom wrote. He says you're no longer his daughter. I read that letter and felt pain, but also something else. Relief. If I was no longer his daughter, then he no longer had power over me. I was an orphan, but I was free. My sisters wrote to me in secret, telling me they were proud, that they wanted to be brave like me. Elizabeth came to visit, brought her children, cried while hugging me. You did what I never dared to do, she told me. The months passed. Lily was growing fast. She started to walk, to say little words. Grace got strong, healthy, her laughter filling the little room Barbara lent me. I kept working in the market, but now I also worked at the support center, helping other women. Rachel taught me things, had me take courses. You have experience that's worth more than a college degree, she'd tell me. You have a story that can change lives. One day, almost a year after the ruling, a young woman came to the center. She was 17, with a scared face, a pregnant belly. They're going to sell me, she said in a trembling voice. My daddy has debts. A rich man offered to pay them if I marry him. They already signed papers. The wedding is in 2 weeks. I don't want to, but my daddy says I have to save the family. I sat with her, took her hands. You don't have to do anything you don't want to do, I told her. You are a person, not merchandise. And we are going to help you, I called Rachel. That same afternoon, we went to the girl's father with a copy of my ruling, with the newspaper articles, with a clear warning. If he proceeded with this sale disguised as a marriage, we would report him. The man got scared. He backed down. The girl was saved. And I understood something in that moment. My suffering had had a purpose. Everything I lived through, everything horrible, had served to open a path, so that other women wouldn't have to go through the same thing, so that men would know it wasn't so easy to buy wives and get away with it anymore. Did everything change overnight? No. Traditions are hard to break. Sexism runs deep. But something did change. A judge had said, out loud, that women were not merchandise. A newspaper had published the story. Women had started to speak, to report, to fight. And I, Sarah Jenkins, the girl who was sold for $500 and 2 cows, the one who was considered defective merchandise for not producing a son. I was standing there, free, helping others to be free too. That was the real victory. Not just my freedom, but understanding that my story, as painful as it was, could be a light for others walking in the same darkness I had walked. The years passed, faster than I expected. Suddenly, Lily was 11 years old, going to school in her uniform, her hair in neat braids. Grace was 10, quieter than her sister, but just as smart. They both could read better than I could. They did their homework on the little table in our room, which was no longer borrowed, but ours. Because Barbara had helped me buy it with a small loan that I paid back in 2 years, selling burritos and working at the support center. It was 1,984. I was 28 years old and had a life I never imagined I would have. I worked part-time at the center, coordinating cases for women in situations of violence or abuse. Rachel had taught me so much: how to fill out legal forms, how to accompany women to file reports, how to talk to authorities without lowering my head. You have a voice, she always told me. Use it. And I used it. I was no longer the quiet girl who didn't make eye contact. Now I looked people straight in the eye. I spoke loudly. I demanded answers. I had accompanied more than 50 women in their cases. Some won, some didn't. But they all left, knowing they had fought, that they weren't alone. The movement that started with my case had grown. We were no longer 30 women, but more than 200 throughout the Peoria region. We had monthly meetings, shared resources, supported each other. Some had managed to annul their forced marriages. Others had recovered land that had been taken from them. Others had simply learned that they had rights, that they could say no, that their daughters didn't have to live through what they had. But something was missing: real economic independence. Because a woman can have all the rights in the world on paper, but if she has no way to eat, if she depends on a man to survive, those rights are just words. It was Patricia, one of the women in the group, who had the idea. She had escaped a marriage where her father-in-law kept all the money she earned selling knitted goods. "What if we form a cooperative?" she said in one of the meetings. "We all know how to do something. Sew, cook, farm. What if we pool what we know and work together? No one can take away what belongs to all of us." The idea caught on like wildfire. We started planning. There were 23 of us at first. I proposed making food to sell at markets and festivals. Others proposed textiles, crafts, growing corn and wheat. "We can do it all," Rachel said enthusiastically. "A comprehensive cooperative. Each one contributes according to her skill." We pooled our small savings. I put in the $200 I had saved over 3 years. Others put in less, others more. In total, we had $1,000. It wasn't much, but it was ours. No one had given it to us. No one could take it away. We rented a large space near the Peoria market. It had a kitchen, space for sewing machines, a storeroom. We gave it a name: Free Women Cooperative of Peoria. The name was clear. We weren't hiding what we were. Women who had been bound and were now free. Women who helped each other because no one else did. The first months were hard. No one took us seriously. We'd go to sell our products, and the merchants would laugh. A women's cooperative? And where are their husbands? They didn't understand that that was precisely the point. We didn't have husbands. Or we did, but we didn't depend on them, or we had escaped from them. It was us, our hands, our work. But the food we made was good. The burritos, the cornbread muffins, the bean soup. All made with our grandmother's recipes. With care. With the desire to get ahead. The textiles were fine, with traditional designs we'd known how to make since we were girls. The corn and wheat we grew on land we rented together was organic. No chemicals, the way it had always been done on the prairie. Little by little, people started to buy from us. First, the women at the market who understood the struggle. Then families who tried our food and came back. then businesses that asked us to cater their events. Within a year, we were earning enough to pay the rent, buy materials, and for each of us to take some money home at the end of the month. It wasn't much, but it was ours, and that changed everything. I watched how the women changed with that independence. Soledad, who had been so quiet, so scared, started to smile more, to stand up straighter. She had her own money for the first time in her life. Her husband could no longer control her with threats of leaving her with nothing. Helen, yes, the same Helen who had helped me escape from Bloomington years ago, had joined the cooperative after finally quitting her job with Robert. I should have done it sooner, she told me. I should have left with you that night. Now she cooked with us, her expert hands working magic with potatoes and spices. My daughters grew up watching all of this. They saw their mother working, managing money, making decisions. They saw the women of the cooperative supporting each other, laughing together, fighting together. Mommy. Lily told me one day, "When I grow up, I want to be like you. I want to help women too." My eyes filled with tears. That was the real triumph. That my daughters would grow up knowing that women can be strong, independent, masters of their own destiny. Grace was different, quieter, more thoughtful. One day she asked me, "Mommy, is it true my daddy bought you?" She was 8. I knew the day would come when I'd have to explain the whole story. I sat down with both of them, took a deep breath, and told them everything. The contract, the conditions, the escape. I explained that their father hadn't been mean just because, but because that's how he was taught, because that was the system, but that it didn't justify it. I told them they were not to blame for anything, that they were the best thing that had ever happened to me, that I loved them more than anything in the world. Lily cried. Grace became very quiet. Then Lily hugged me tight. "You were so brave, Mommy." Grace said something that surprised me. "I want to be a lawyer like Aunt Rachel, to help women like you." She was 8 years old and already knew what she wanted to do with her life. The years kept passing. The cooperative grew. We were no longer 23, but 42 women. We bought the building instead of renting. We started exporting our textiles to craft stores in Chicago and even to other countries. Tourists came to visit us, impressed by our story, by what we had built together. In 1990, when Lily was 17 and Grace was 16, I received a letter. It was from my sister Elizabeth. "Daddy is very sick," she wrote. "The doctors say he doesn't have much time. He's asking for you. He says he wants to see you before he dies. I hadn't seen my father in 16 years. Not since the day he sold me. Not since his contract was publicly annulled and he disowned me. 16 years of silence. And now, on his deathbed, he wanted to see me. I talked to Rachel. "It's your decision," she said. "No one can tell you what to do. But Sarah, whatever you decide, let it be for your peace, not for his." I decided to go. Not for him. For me. Because I needed to close that door completely. I needed to look him in the eye, old and dying, and tell him what I never could. I traveled to Havenwood with my 2 daughters. They wanted to meet their grandfather, even though I had explained everything. "He's still our grandpa," Lily said. "We want to see him." The house was the same, but older, more run down. My mom came out to greet me. She was ancient, bent over, her hair completely white. She hugged me, crying. My girl, my girl. My sisters were there, their own children running around the yard. They hugged me, introduced me to their families. It was strange to be back after so long. My father was in bed, as skinny as a rail, his skin yellow, breathing with difficulty. When he saw me come in, his eyes filled with tears. "Sarah," he said in a weak voice. "You came." I sat beside him. Lily and Grace stayed in the doorway, watching. I came, I said, but I didn't come to forgive you. I came to tell you something you need to know before you die. He nodded, waiting. You sold me, I said, my voice clear, not trembling. You signed papers that turned me into merchandise. You handed me over to a man who treated me worse than his cattle. You put your debts, your pride, your money above your own daughter. And when I had the courage to escape, when a judge declared that what you did was immoral, you disowned me. You told me I was no longer your daughter. He cried silently, tears running down his wrinkled face. Well, you know what? I continued. You were right. I am not your daughter anymore. That girl you sold is dead. The woman I am now, I built her myself, with the help of other women. Yes, with the support of people who saw me as a person, not as property, but with nothing from you. I owe you my life, Daddy. That's true, but I don't owe you anything else. Nothing. My father coughed. He tried to speak. Sorry, he managed to say. Sarah, sorry. It was a mistake. I just wanted to save the family. You saved your debt. I interrupted. You destroyed your daughter. Those are two different things. I stood up. But I came to tell you something else. Those two girls in the doorway are your granddaughters, Lily and Grace. You never met them. You never asked about them. They are here because they wanted to come. Because they are more generous than I am. They are proof that I survived. That I built a new life. That your mistake didn't destroy me. I called the girls. They came in shyly. My father looked at them, his eyes full of tears. My granddaughters, he whispered. They're beautiful. Lily and Grace came closer, touched his hand. I don't know what they felt in that moment. Maybe pity, maybe curiosity, maybe nothing. Daddy, I said finally, you can die knowing that I am fine, that my daughters are fine, that despite everything, we made it. I don't know if that gives you peace. I don't know if it makes you feel better or worse. But that's the truth. I left that house the same day. My father died 3 weeks later. I went to the funeral. I stood in the back of the church. I watched them bury him in the Havenwood Cemetery. I didn't cry. I felt nothing. Not hate, not love. Just the closing of a very old chapter in a book I had rewritten. On the bus back to Peoria, Grace asked me, Mommy, was it good that you forgave him? I shook my head. I didn't forgive him, honey. I just let him go. Those are different things. Forgiving is saying, what you did is okay. Letting go is saying, what you did doesn't control me anymore. I let go. This is one of the most profound lessons of Sarah's entire journey. Peace doesn't always come from forgiveness, but from liberation, freeing yourself from the weight of someone else's actions. With that final, quiet act of letting go, Sarah wasn't just closing a chapter. She was finally claiming authorship of her own story. And what a remarkable story it would become. This is one of the most important things I learned. Many people will tell you that you have to forgive to find peace, but nobody has the right to demand your forgiveness. Real peace comes when you decide that wound no longer has the power to define your future. You put that burden down, not for them, but for yourself. That same year, Grace finished high school with the best grades in her class. I'm going to study law, Mommy, she told me. I'm going to be a lawyer like Aunt Rachel. I hugged her so tight. My daughter, who was born in chaos, who almost died as a baby because her father didn't value her, was going to be a lawyer. She was going to defend other women. She was going to continue the fight. Lily wanted to be a teacher, to teach girls they can be whatever they want, she'd say. They both had scholarships. They were both going to college. They were both going to break the cycle completely. The cooperative kept growing. In 1995, we were more than 60 women. We had our own large building, with offices, with industrial sewing machines, with a full kitchen. We provided food to 3 hotels in Peoria. We sold textiles to stores all over Illinois. We farmed 10 acres of corn. And most importantly, we had helped over 300 women escape situations of abuse, annul forced marriages, get jobs, and build new lives. 300, each with her story, each with her pain. Finding strength in sisterhood. Rachel was still there, fighting case by case. Older, with more gray hair, but with the same fire. Sarah, she told me one day, do you realize what we've done? It started with you, with your case. And look at everything that grew from it. You changed lives. I shook my head. It wasn't just me. It was you. It was Barbara. It was every woman who decided to fight. I was just the first. But someone had to be the first, she replied, smiling. And it was you. That counts. She was right. Someone had to be the first to say no, the first to flee, the first to sue, the first to expose the horrible practices to the light. I was that first. And I realized that was an honor, a painful honor, won through suffering, but an honor nonetheless. And here I am now, sitting in front of this camera, 71 years old, telling you this story I kept hidden for so long. 55 years have passed since that wedding night when I discovered I had been sold. 55 years since it all began. I look at my hands as I speak. They are old hands now, with age spots, with pronounced veins, with deep wrinkles. But they are strong hands. Hands that made thousands of burritos, that sewed hundreds of quilts, that signed the cooperative's documents, that hugged my daughters and now hug my grandchildren. Hands that chose to fight instead of giving up. Lily is 54 now. She's an elementary school teacher here in Peoria. She has 3 children. My first grandson is named Walter, after my father, because Lily is more generous than I am. She has a bigger heart. She says the name doesn't erase what happened, but it can start something new. Her other 2 children are Noah and Sophia. All 3 go to school. All 3 read and write better than I ever could. All 3 have big dreams. Grace kept her promise. She's a lawyer. She works in Chicago for an organization that defends the rights of rural women. She travels all over Illinois, documenting cases, filing lawsuits, fighting in courtrooms. She's married to a good man, an engineer who respects her, who washes dishes, who changes diapers, who sees her as a partner, not property. They have a daughter, my granddaughter Mia, who is 8 years old and already says she wants to be President of the United States to change the laws and help all the women like my grandma, Sarah. She says, with that confidence, only children who grow up knowing they are valued have. The Free Women Cooperative is still running. I don't manage it anymore. I'm too old for that, but I go often. I help where I can. I give advice when they ask. We are 87 women now, 87, each with her story, each a survivor of something. Together, we are strong. Together, we are unstoppable. Last year, we celebrated the 30th anniversary of the cooperative. We had a big party. We invited everyone who was ever part of it, those we helped, their sons and daughters. More than 200 people came. Rachel gave a speech, elderly now, but still with that fire in her eyes. This started with Sarah's case, she said, with one brave girl who said no. And look at everything that grew from that seed. They made me come to the front. I didn't want to. I never liked being the center of attention. But they insisted. The women gave me a standing ovation, some crying. You taught us we could fight, said Soledad, who now has her own sewing business and supports her 5 children alone after divorcing the husband who beat her. You showed us the way. But I always tell them the same thing. I didn't show anyone anything. I just did what I had to do to survive, to save my daughters. We built the path together, step by step, mistake by mistake, victory by victory. And Robert, he died 10 years ago. I found out by chance. Someone mentioned in the market that the landowner Johnson from Bloomington had passed away. I felt of nothing. Not relief, not sadness. Just the acknowledgement that a chapter already closed now had a final period. He never remarried after me, from what I heard. He never had the son he so desperately wanted. He died alone in his big house, with his money and his lands, but with no family to mourn him. Sometimes I think that was his punishment. Not the judge's ruling, not the public humiliation, but the loneliness of a man who never learned to see people as people. My sisters and I, we see each other now and then. Elizabeth died 5 years ago from diabetes. I miss her. She was the one who always believed in me, even when I didn't believe in myself. My mom died 8 years ago, peacefully in her sleep, surrounded by her daughters and grandchildren. In her final years, she apologized to me many times for not protecting me better. I didn't know, she'd tell me, crying. I didn't know everything your father had agreed to. I forgave her. Her, yes, because she was also a victim of the same system that trapped me. She too had been a girl sold long ago, a wife without a voice, a mother without power. She did what she could with the tools she had. Barbara, my savior, my sister of the heart, is still alive. She's 82. She can't work much anymore, but she comes to the cooperative almost every day to drink tea and chat. Just to remind you all that I was the first one to believe in you, she jokes. And it's true. She gave me a roof when I had nowhere to sleep. She taught me to sell, to fight, to believe I deserved something better. Without Barbara, none of this would exist. Sometimes angels don't have wings. They wear aprons and sell vegetables at the market. Rachel is 75. She doesn't litigate cases anymore, but she teaches at the university, training new lawyers who continue the fight. She visits me often. We drink herbal tea. And remember, did you ever imagine we'd get this far? She asks me. And I tell her the truth. No, I never imagined. That night, when I got on the bus, fleeing Bloomington with $53 and 2 babies, I was only thinking about surviving one more day. I wasn't thinking about cooperatives, or movements, or changing laws. I was just thinking, let my daughters live. Let them not suffer what I suffered. And yet, from that simple, desperate thought, all of this grew. Now I want to speak directly to you, to those who are watching me, to those who might be going through something similar, or know someone who is. If you are in a marriage where you are treated like property, where you have no voice, where your value is measured by what you produce or the children you provide, you are not crazy. You are not exaggerating. And you are not alone. If your parents are negotiating your future without asking you, if there are papers they won't let you read, if there are agreements that involve you but you're kept in the dark about, you have a right to know. You have a right to say no. It doesn't matter how much debt there is. It doesn't matter how much money is involved. You are not currency. If you have daughters, and someone tells you they are worth less than sons, that person is lying. Your daughters are worth everything. My 2 daughters, who Robert said were useless, look at what they are now. A teacher who shapes minds. A lawyer who defends rights. Both mothers to beautiful children who are growing up knowing that women and men have the same value. If you are thinking of escaping but you're afraid, fear is normal. I was terrified that dawn, but I was more afraid of staying, more afraid that my baby would die because her father didn't value her, more afraid of living my whole life as merchandise. So, ask yourself, what am I more afraid of? The horrible known or the unknown that might, just might, be better? If you've already escaped and are starting from scratch, you will make it. It won't be easy. There will be days when you want to give up, when the money runs out, when the loneliness is heavy, when you miss even the bad things because at least they were familiar. But day by day, step by step, you will build something new, something that is yours. And that is worth all the fear, all the exhaustion, all the tears. If you are a man watching this, ask yourself how you treat the women in your life. Your wife, your daughters, your mother, your sisters. Do you see them as whole people or as functions? Do you listen to them or just hear them? Do you give them the same value you give to sons? You can be different. You can raise sons who respect. You can be the husband who washes dishes, who changes diapers, who sees his wife as a partner. My son-in-law is. It's possible. You just have to choose. If you are a father or a mother, please, please, do not sell your daughters. Do not negotiate them. Do not use them to pay debts or gain advantages. They are people. They are not tools. And if you think, I would never do that, ask yourself if you are allowing them to choose their future, or if you are deciding it for them without asking. Because there are many ways to sell someone. Some have notarized papers. Others are just pressure, manipulation. It's for your own good. I'm going to tell you something I've learned in all these years. Marriage should be a partnership, not ownership. It should be two people who choose to be together, who respect each other, who support each other. Not a contract where one buys and one is bought. Not a transaction where one commands and one obeys. If your marriage doesn't have mutual respect, if there's no freedom to choose, if there isn't an equal voice for both, then it's not a marriage, it's something else. And you deserve better. I also learned this. Blood doesn't always make family. My father was my blood, but he was the one who sold me. Barbara was not my blood, but she was the one who saved me. Rachel was not my blood, but she was the one who fought for me. The women of the cooperative are not my blood, but they are my sisters. Family is chosen. It's built. It's earned with love and support, not with shared last names. And I learned that pain can have a purpose. I'm not saying pain is good. I'm not saying I deserve to suffer to learn. That's a lie people tell to feel better. Pain is pain, and no one deserves it. But if you have already suffered, if you have already been through hell, you can choose what to do with it. You can stay bitter, trapped in your trauma, or you can transform it into something, into testimony that helps others, into strength to fight, into wisdom to share. I chose the second option. Not every day. Some days I stayed bitter, trapped, angry. But most days, I chose to transform. My grandchildren ask me sometimes, "Grandma, aren't you angry at your dad? Don't you hate Robert?" And I tell them the truth. I spent many years angry, many years hating, but anger and hate are like carrying heavy stones. They tire you out, they bend you over, they make you old before your time. One day, I decided to put the stones down, not because they deserved it, but because I deserved to walk light. I let go, and that day, I started to truly live, not just survive. Now I live in a small house here in Peoria. I have my garden with medicinal herbs that I use to cure neighbors' stomach aches. I have my chickens that give me eggs. I have the cooperative nearby where I go to drink tea with the women. I have my daughters who visit me, my grandchildren who fill my house with noise and joy. I have peace, peace that I earned, that I built, that I deserved. I still have bad days. Yes, nightmares sometimes. Where I'm back in that house in Bloomington, where I hear Robert's voice saying, "I lose nothing." Days where the memories weigh on me. Days where I think of all the women who didn't manage to escape, who weren't lucky enough to find a Barbara or a Rachel. Days where I wonder what else I could have done, how many more I could have helped. But most days are good. Days where the sun shines on the prairie and the air smells like corn blooming. Days where my grandchildren hug me and say, "Grandma, tell us another story." Days where I see the women of the cooperative laughing together, strong, free. Days where I get a letter from Grace telling me about another case won, another woman freed. Days where I feel it was all worth it. If you've made it this far in my story, I want to thank you from the bottom of my heart. It's not easy to listen to stories like this, just as it's not easy to tell them. But I believe that sharing our wounds, our struggles, and our victories is a way of extending a hand to someone who might be going through something similar, of saying, "You are not alone." There is a way forward. There is light after the darkness. After all, this long journey has taught me a few profound things. That a person's worth can't be measured on a piece of paper or by their ability to bear children. That a true family isn't always made of those who share your blood, but of those who reach out a hand when you fall. And the most important thing I learned is that the past may be where you come from, but it has absolutely no right to decide where you are going. And for those very reasons, I want to speak directly to you now. To the woman who feels like a shadow in her own home, please believe that your voice is incredibly important. To the man who is listening, I hope you will choose to be a partner, not a master. And to the parents, please remember that your children are souls to be nurtured, not assets to be traded. My own journey began on a dark, fearful night, but it didn't end there. I chose to move forward, I chose to fight, and I chose to write the final chapter of my own life, and I believe you can do the same. If this story has touched your heart, please subscribe to the Grandmother's Memories channel. Leave a like and a comment to let us know where you're watching from, because every story shared is another light lit in the darkness. And